Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another Think With Me Thursday here on Effective. My name is Justin. Today we have a fun stream planned. First things first, we're going to get off into, I've conducted a couple of polls that a few of you have responded to over the last week or so on the YouTube channel's community page. I'm going to get into discussing what those are and kind of the results of that, some interesting insights and thoughts that I think you all are sharing through that. And then the majority of the stream today, I'm going to spend doing a little bit of research into remote work trends. I'm giving a talk in about a month to a group of people in my area for remote work. And so I'm going to leverage my PKM system using Obsidian, potentially even Readwise, and then dive into doing some research there for that. So with that today, we're going to dive right into Obsidian, or rather the community tab on the Effective YouTube channel. We'll take a look and go from there. It's been kind of a fun week for me so far. Been a busy week. It seems like a lot of folks, or a lot of my days have something going on in the morning right away, have a little bit of time midday and afternoon, and then again busy with an event or activity in the evening. And I've noticed that's taken a toll on my energy levels, and so it's been kind of wild to walk through that. But anyway, I'm going to pop over to the community tab, and we're going to take a look at a couple of these polls that we conducted this week. So the first one is this poll here. Are you happy with your ability to achieve your goals? And then another one about productivity systems. We'll look at this one here real quick first while it loads up. If it'll load up. Okay, so 60 people voted on this one. Are you happy with your ability to achieve your goals? 17% said yes, 38% sometimes, and 45% of you mentioned no, I need some help. Hey Clement, welcome to the stream. I'm doing awesome today. Hope you're doing well where you are. Glad to have you here. We're just digging into this poll here on the stream. So yeah, this was an interesting thing. I was a little bit surprised to see so many folks having challenges with their ability to achieve their goals. It seems like this is something that is a perennial topic of interest amongst productivity thought leaders and those interested in this space. But to have basically 83% of people say, yeah, the goals are a little bit shaky for me, that kind of surprised me, to be honest. Now, granted, this is a sample size of 60. It's not like we're talking 100,000 people here or something like that, so we can't draw too many conclusions from it. But be expecting a video coming soon on how I think through goals, because I think about them a little bit differently. I don't usually take the typical SMART goal approach or anything like that. I've got my own system that I've cobbled together from a variety of different places and sources that helps me kind of stay on track for the big picture and gets me going in different directions and honestly to places. But I guess kind of the one thing I'll tease out of this is many of us are accustomed to measuring achievement when it comes to goals. I've in some ways abandoned that pursuit because it always makes me feel like I'm failing when I don't achieve my goals, right? But the one thing that I am doing now is looking back and measuring progress. Am I further along on the journey than where I was when I started? So for example, in 2020 and in 2019, I decided to start this YouTube channel. And I mean, it was, quite a slog to try to navigate that and get that going to begin with. But over the course of that year, I hit a couple of viral videos, which really helped in the productivity space. And looking back, clearly, I mean, with the subscriber count that I have and the number of views that our videos are getting, I've made progress. And so I didn't set a goal to hit 10,000 subscribers within 2 years or anything like that. I just said, I want to start this YouTube channel. I want to do my best at it. And then looking back, clearly I've made progress in that direction to having a successful channel. Obviously, I'm doing reassessments along the way, things of that sort, trying to gauge, am I on the right path for this? Is this something that I still want to be doing? The answer is yes. I love doing this. I think this is super fun to chat with you here on stream and through these videos and sharing together some of the insights that we can learn from each other's experiences with productivity. But yeah, anyway, I found this interesting that folks have a challenge with achieving their goals. Expect a video coming soon about that. The other poll just yesterday, or 2 days ago now, just about, how often do you feel overwhelmed with your productivity system? The reason I ask this is because I've had a number of occasions over the course of the 10 years or more that I've been learning about and even teaching productivity, where I've felt overwhelmed by my productivity system as well. And so 4% of 50 votes said never, once or twice a year at 18%, quite regularly 54%, and I'm constantly overwhelmed 24%. So literally 78% of you who voted, again, this is a small sample size, 50 people, but 78% of those who voted on this poll are at least quite regularly overwhelmed by their productivity systems. This is not something I have an exact solution for, but it's been something, as I mentioned, that I've been wrestling with myself over the last couple of years. I've been trying to find something a little bit more sustainable, something that's not so hefty and that feels like I have a lot of frustration with or friction with, that feels overwhelming in the long run. I think a lot of overwhelm for myself comes from not editing enough. And what I mean by that is not restricting the number of things that I have on my plate at one time enough, trying to take on too much. So when I take on too much, that's when I get overburdened, overwhelmed. The other thing with productivity systems too is that they tend to be a quadrant 2 activity to maintain. It's important to maintain them, but it's not urgent. And therefore, if we continue living at an urgent level for the things that we're dealing with, then kind of what happens is we let things fall off the wagon a bit. The things that are supposedly urgent, that take up our time and effort and our energy, those end up taking all the priority. But in reality, just like things like exercise and health and investing in other areas that are not necessarily urgent, the productivity system tends to take a backseat too. So then it can be really difficult to get back on the wagon, which is one of the comments that in follow-up of this, got a couple comments here, that Ty said his biggest challenge and most overwhelming thing is getting back on the bike after falling off. Yeah, that honestly is one of the hardest things. If you've abandoned a productivity system by feeling overwhelmed for a couple of weeks, getting that initial review back in and to try to get things situated so that you can actually do stuff and act on it, that can be really hard to do, like really hard to do. And so I can totally relate with that, Ty. Maybe we'll do a video at some point talking about how to deal with overwhelm in your productivity system and in your life, because I know a lot of us, myself included, have so many things coming at us all the time that it can be really hard to sift through it all and figure it all out. So thanks all for participating in these polls. It's really been fun to learn where everybody's sitting in terms of productivity, what kind of tools you're using. We'll continue to do some of these as well over the course of time as we go forward. But yeah, I mean, that's really a lot of it in regards to the polls that we've been doing. Also helps me to make videos that are relevant to you, because that's ultimately what matters to me. Is I want to be able to share insight and wisdom and information that I've gained over the years, and then I can also learn and kind of articulate for you as well to make sure that it's helpful. That's really why we're here, is to help you live a healthy, effective, sustainable life. So with that, I'm going to jump into doing a little bit of research. As I mentioned again at the beginning of the stream, I'm doing a talk in a few weeks on remote work trends. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on stream today just fleshing out some high level outlines for this talk, and then also looking at being able to get some statistics involved. I know there's some studies that companies like Buffer and others have done in regard to remote work. And so I want to dig into some of those and pull some interesting facts out as well. So with that, I am going to, I guess, just start doing some research. Make sure my Readwise extension, let's do Buffer state of remote work. See where that gets us to start. 2022. Cool. I didn't realize they had their 2022 report out, which is really nice. Let's see. Can I use this like this? Well, let me clip it. No. All right, so I will share this a little bit. I use the Readwise highlighter extension. The one downside of it is that I've accidentally clipped stuff on like LinkedIn. And so I have a hard time getting rid of them too. I've got just these random little spots highlighted. And so what happens is that Readwise wants to highlight them on page inside of LinkedIn. But when it does that, it makes LinkedIn basically crash and slow to a crawl, so I can't even use it. So I have to turn this off so that I can even browse sites. So yeah, it's kind of annoying. I'll turn that on all sites. I'll refresh the page, see if that kicks in. There we go. Okay. So we'll just use this for right now. We'll do some reading and figure out if there's anything interesting here that we want to pull into this talk. Just highlight some of the important statistics. Because these will be interesting to pull out as well. The one tip too with the Readwise highlighter is that you can highlight images, and that's really handy. Those get pulled over into your Obsidian vault as well. Upvote comment. What are your Google extensions? I don't have very many, but I'm using the 1Password integration. I'm using uBlock Origin for ad block. Readwise highlighter. This one is Scribe, which was a sponsor of the channel a few videos ago. But this is a really handy utility if you're interested in documenting a process on a website. So for example, if you're going in and editing a blog post inside of your CMS, or if you are maybe in like Google AdWords or something like that, and managing a campaign in there, and you want to communicate to somebody else how to do something inside of there, this does all the legwork for you without having to take screenshots it and document where you're clicking. It's extremely handy. And then, yeah, I've just got some other stuff. I use vidIQ sometimes for YouTube. I have the Readwise extension. When I was using Todoist, I had that installed here as well. MetaMask, I was just kind of playing around with that, not something I'm super serious involved with, but that's really it. Nothing too crazy. I think this statistic is interesting here. Do you think career growth is more or less difficult for remote workers to achieve? More difficult, less difficult, no impact. So 45% of folks say that career growth is more difficult for remote workers. I do think that that is true to some degree, especially if you have a hybrid remote company where they have some people in an office and some people at home, and the company is not built in a remote first way. Remote first meaning that you have a group of people, or the company is structured in a way to work to function as if everybody is remote, even though some people are in the office. So I think that's an important thing to have for any company. So 49% are fully remote, 23 remote first, 16% office occasional, 11% office first. Yeah, upvote. It does depend upon the work, company, industry. Very true. Some industries are a lot more hesitant to fully transition to remote work, and the reason being, for many of them, including like the financial industry, is security. When you have all sorts of different networks now that are your company is connecting up through, sometimes that can be a security risk for those companies, especially for people dealing with sensitive information. But if you're a company that doesn't really have a lot of concern for that, then it's really a bit easier to transition to remote unless you have a lot of in-person collaboration. Like, for example, if you're working on a hardware product or something physical, then it's basically a challenge to try to do that remotely. What kind of remote work structure would you like to have? Okay, so this is highlighting the differences between what's reality and what is desired. Reality and then desired. Just pop those in there because that'll sync over to my Obsidian Vault when I'm coming back through and processing those. So this is kind of getting into the different structures of remote work that kind of underpin it. A lot of the benefits that remote work offers: flexible working hours, no meeting days, 4-day work week. So this is interesting, tying into some of the things that Cal Newport often says as a criticism for remote work is that people are just on 8-hour Zoom days now and they have no time to get any of their work done. Well, it's because companies are trying to slap on their in-office culture into a remote work culture, and unfortunately that doesn't work in a lot of cases. So this is where some of these tactical elements of having flexible work hours, days where there is no meetings, or even a 4-day work week can really help bolster folks who or companies that are transitioning to remote. I like their idea here too of using a 4-day work week as kind of a rule of thumb, not a set rule. Working 5 shorter days or using Fridays as an overflow day. Obviously stuff happens where you might need to work a little extra. Yeah, Nicholas, 4-day work week for the win. Exactly. There's a lot of companies that are heading to that mode of thought, which makes a lot of sense, I think. I think a 4-day work week in a knowledge work world can offer a lot of power. One, because when you time crunch things, sometimes people focus on their priority work more instead of dealing with the cruft or the extra stuff that comes in. And so you have to be more ruthless with what are your priorities for this time, because you have less time to deal with it, and therefore you tend to be more productive because you have greater constraints on your time. It's the whole Parkinson's law deal, where work expands to the time allotted to it. But again, yes, upvote. Does depend on the work, company, and industry. If the pandemic ended today, would you like to primarily work remotely from multiple locations or work from home? That's interesting. So this is another reality versus desire situation. So only 38% of the companies of employees surveyed have a remote work or asynchronous first work policy, and 52% would like there to be. So again, I'm working on a talk for a group of business owners, basically, who are interested in learning about the trends about remote work. And so these are some trends. Doesn't necessarily mean it applies in every circumstance or in every business type, but just doing some education. Top benefits of remote work: 67% flexibility in time, 62% in location. I think that's probably pretty accurate. Living in a smaller community, I would definitely lean on some of these as some of the benefits of remote work. I've never had to deal with a long commute time. I've never lived in a big city, so I don't really see that as a benefit for myself. I know tons of people who live in cities like San Francisco or New York, Phoenix, where commute times are really long, LA. That's a massive benefit. But I would say for me, flexibility to live where I choose and better financial outcomes. Well, frankly, I mean, I would not be able to do many of the jobs that I have done without remote work. because I live in a town of like 15,000 people. And there just aren't tech jobs around here. And so it's been great that I've been able to work at tech companies living in a rural community. I find this interesting. I don't have any struggles working remotely. That one, 31% of people. I guess some people just have everything kind of sorted out, and they've got a good balance with things, and that's awesome. I know I've definitely struggled with these top two, not being able to unplug and loneliness. Staying motivated is not something that I have dealt with, but I know other folks do. But for me, it's been more, how do I set healthy boundaries around my work time? In both a positive sense, in that, I need to stop work. Well, that's not really the right way to phrase it, I guess, but in the sense of I need to stop work at a certain time so that I have enough time with my family, but also in another sense of making sure that I'm putting enough work time in during the day. Not that I don't get work done when I work from home and working remotely, or get enough work time in, but making sure that I'm structuring it in a way where I'm the most effective versus kind of being a little bit more freeform with it. I think that can be a little challenging. One of the benefits of having a more firm schedule is that people, there's set expectations. They don't have to think about the constraints. If you have to be to work at 8 and you leave at 5, then that's the way it is. But the downside of that then is that you don't get the benefits of flexibility. You don't get the benefits of, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm having a rough time right now. So then what do? You just have to sit and try to work through it, even though you're kind of not really getting anything meaningful done anyway. I'm not really... Upvote is saying, as a copywriter, 100% remote work, my struggles is the constraints. Yeah, I really honestly feel like one of the things that remote work has done, whether you're doing it via freelance or you're doing it as a remote worker for a fully remote company, is that without constraints, it does kind of bleed into everything, especially if you're a contractor or a small business owner working remotely like that. Upvote saying, I don't know the day anymore sometimes. Yeah, I can fully relate to that. The last week and a half, I've literally been mentally confused. I wake up on a Thursday morning and I'm like, is it Sunday today? Literally. And part of that is because I'm in the middle of a job hunt right now. And so I'm in between jobs, but I also am focusing on building Effective out further. And so I can very much relate to that because you kind of just work whenever and when you can. The flexibility is really nice. I love being able to just get up in the morning and go do something with my kids. Yeah, is it Sunday today? Exactly. But yeah, I love being able to just get up and do something with my kids, or just take the morning and go do a fun activity and then come back and work. But the other side of it is, if I actually do have work I need to get done, sometimes it ends up getting put off further. Or one of the challenges that I've had in just this in between season is, how do I say this? One of the challenges I've had in this in-between season is literally putting in enough, or basically only having about 2 days a week to work, 2 full days, because there's other stuff going on, and my wife and I share the load with the kids and trying to figure it all out. Clement says, interesting. I do not have this struggle. I think for me, the kids make sure I'm too tired to work too much. Well, yeah, there is that too. I don't have a problem with like working too late or anything like that because it's kind of a natural cadence in our family to have dinner relatively early. Otherwise, it becomes a problem. And then beyond that, it's family time. And then basically after that, the kids go to bed. I'm too shot to get anything done anyway. So the last couple of nights I've come and done a little bit of video editing just because I've needed to get ahead on a couple of things. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. And it's interesting too, on Upvote's comment about not knowing what day it is anymore. It's not like I'm working every day either. A lot of times I'm not even working on a Saturday or a Sunday. It's just that there are no waypoints in the week for me to know, okay, it's Monday, here we are, it's time to get back to work, or hey, it's Thursday. About the only thing I have set in my schedule anymore these days is this live stream at approximately 1 p.m. Central Time every week on Thursdays. So I usually know it's Thursday, but other days it's just like, where am I at? My head just can't wrap it around because I don't have enough waypoints in the week because I don't have that structure in my week like I used to. And so I'm a part of that has become just the state of the world and things being so much more fluid that they have been over the last couple of years. And other parts of that is largely a lot of that too is just kind of the state of flux that I'm in and not really having a lot of clarity in general too, trying to get some clarity. So this one's interesting here too. The increase with remote work is meetings. 61% of people said they are in more meetings as a result of COVID forced remote work. Again, I think this honestly comes down to companies not really taking the time or really not understanding that they need to rethink through their processes and how they conduct business in order to effectively work in a remote setting. Elena, hey, welcome to the stream. Elena says, hey all, first time working from home and I think that I overwork most of the time. I'm interested to hear from you actually. What leads you to think that you're overworking? Is it that you're tired at the end of the day? Are you just kind of finding yourself burnt out by the end of the week? What does that look like to you? Are you having a lot of meetings or are you just putting in a lot of hours? I'd love to hear a little bit more from you on what you're thinking about that, and we can talk about it a bit more on stream. So this I think is an interesting thing here, and I have been I've experienced this directly, feeling disconnected at work as a result of working remotely. I just had coffee with Nicholas. Nicholas lives in the same town that I do, Nicholas Jackson Art. We just had coffee and we were just talking about this, about how a lot of times in remote settings, things can feel more transactional. And what I mean by that is that when you're connecting with coworkers, you're sending them a message to say, hey, can you help me with this thing? Or, hey, can you do this? And it's more transactional in nature where you're asking for something and getting something in return. Instead of having those water cooler type chats where you just kind of wander over to your coworker's cubicle and say, hey, how you doing? And just catching up on life for 5-10 minutes or something like that. You have to be extremely intentional to have those kind of relationships in a remote work environment. And if the culture in the company isn't structured in a way where it's expected for this to be happening intentionally, then a lot of times people will resist it. They either just get head down in their work, they get just kind of lost in their own environment. Maybe they're hanging out with their family, or they're going to hang out with people in their community. And as a result, the people that you work with do often end up feeling more like cogs in a machine, people who get things done, and maybe people who you see from a distance but not really have any personal interaction with. So Elena is saying, I put in a lot of hours and find that I have less time for the chores, the kids, and free time, and I will definitely burn out in a month trying to find a healthier schedule. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to back up here a little bit since we're talking on this for a moment. I want to share a little bit of my story about burnout and work hours and things of that sort. Because work hours can be like long extra hours, and not having a lot of time for the other things in life can be a really big challenge, and really it can lead you to work burnout. There are some other factors too to think about with it as well. Sometimes it's just a level of stress and not even necessarily a number of hours. So last year, 2021, which ironically enough was the year that my yearly theme was the year of slowing down. So I was intentioning myself to slow down, try to find a healthier rhythm, try to find space in my schedule, hang out with my family more, do more fun things, get more hobbies, things like that. But it was also the year where I hit about a burnout. Last summer, after the pandemic started, I had started a second podcast. I was running one podcast. I started a second podcast. I had started this YouTube channel. I was working a full-time job. I had 3 kids at home, and a wife, and trying to manage the household, but not really going anywhere because of the state of the world. And in July of last year, about a year ago, actually, I hit a wall and I just couldn't do it anymore. I literally could not come up with any new ideas that I wanted to do for this channel, for this business, for anything. And so I literally had to put it all on hold. I think I did one video between July and December last year. I did maybe one live stream toward the end of the year, just kind of announcing that I was coming back, which was kind of fun. But I hit a huge wall. And it's not like I was working an exorbitant number of hours. I was maybe putting 8 or 9 hours in a day. But there were some factors in my schedule that led up into this, such as sharing childcare with my wife instead of having out-of-the-home childcare. So we swapped days while she was working and while I was working. So that added some stress to it. It also, the stress of the general world situation. And then I had actually kind of switched careers into a job last year in marketing, which was a lot of pressure and stress as well, too, trying to learn that and figure that out. And so for me, it wasn't so much an hours issue, but it was a stress level issue. That led me to the place of burnout. And I just had to whittle down literally everything that was not critical in order to be able to find a rhythm and a place of health again. And so it took me about 6 months to come back to the place and say, you know what? I think I'm ready to pick up these extra things again and try to find that place. And so burnout is not a fun place to be. I did a talk on burnout actually. At a conference last year. Let me look it up. See if I can find it. So it was at the CMX Summit. Oh. Let's see here. There it is. course, it's taking an age and a half to load, but I will post the link in chat for you if you're interested in checking that out at some point. So yeah, Elena, it can be tough to find that balance, but I guess one of the things that I would recommend trying to do if I were in your shoes is just really take an honest assessment of the activities and even responsibilities on your plate. I don't know what kind of job or role that you have that's causing a lot of hours. I don't know if you're self-employed or if you're full-time employed, but what I would really recommend doing is take an honest assessment, list out all the responsibilities and activities that you and your family are involved in, that you have to be overseeing to some degree, and try to figure out if there's anything that even for a season, like maybe even 6 months, to remove from your plate, whether it's something that somebody else can take responsibility over, or maybe it's an initiative you can pause, whatever it is. Take some time, slow down, and just try to find that healthier rhythm. I would also recommend reading the book At Your Best by Carey Nieuwhof. I just got done reading this, and I think it's an excellent exposition on how to find a healthier balance in your schedule so that you're not so burnt out. He breaks it down in terms of energy zones within your day. Like you have your highest energy, which is your green zone, your lowest energy, which is your red zone, and then your yellow zone, which is basically anywhere in between. And trying to identify the highest value things that you do and do those in your green zone periods. Just about everybody has this similar rhythm in their day. Where their green zones are located are going to be different person to person, but day to day, the same person is probably going to have a similar spot for their green zones throughout the week. So for me, my green zone at this point in time and season in my life is between like 9 and noon, sometimes even stretching to 1 and 1 p.m. And then my red zones are really starting about 4 or 5 in the evening, and then beyond that. And then my yellow zones are from when I wake up to about 9 o'clock, and then from about 12 or 1 to about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It really just kind of depends on how I structure my day and my rhythm, but that's kind of the general time frame. So that's to answer your question, Upvote. It's kind of where my color zone hours are located. And if you can start to whittle down the activities to the essential ones or the highest value ones, use the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, or Pareto principle, however you want to pronounce it, to whittle down into your top most valuable activities, and then schedule them into those times if you can. Even if you just block off general, like, okay, from in my green zone on Wednesday, this is the time that I'm focusing on this. Now, I don't know if you're working in a client work type role too, because those can often be really stressful and a lot of hours involved there. But seeing if there's ways that you can scale that and bring more people into it and hand off other responsibilities and grow what you're working on, that might be a way out of it too. But I hope that's helpful. And if you have any more questions, Elena, happy to answer them here on stream. Interesting how we were just talking about that in relation to this above. They cover transactional basics like technology for remote collaboration, but fall short in team building and team connection activity. Jeez. Sure. Okay. Elena is saying, I tried that, but like you, time blocking isn't always how my brain works. I'm a developer, so it's not only about stress, it's about getting my problem solving too much. Yeah, you're welcome for the advice as well. I hear you there on the problem solving bit. I am a person who likes to dive into a problem and just hammer at it until I fix it. One of the things that I've really had to learn is to spend dedicated time on the problem, but then intentionally walk away from it, because a lot of times my brain is cranking on it uh, subconsciously, and then when I come back to it, whether it's an hour later or the next morning, I often have a clearer solution for what it is. But again, like if you're looking at trying to crank through like a client work as a developer, if you're billing hourly or something like that, that might not necessarily be the most ideal situation for you too. But if you're on more of like a salary role, there might be some ways that you can dig in and structure your day, whether you're time blocking or doing something else, or just setting a set of priorities for yourself for the day, and setting limits too, because I definitely relate to that. Like you want to get in, you want to figure something out, and then you just keep going. But then you kind of hit that there is a point of diminishing returns for everybody. And maybe there's just a cutoff line that you put for yourself. You take an hour or two break from working on something, and you're able to come back to it later. So you get a little bit of space in your day that way. But literally any way that you can try to build a little bit of margin in your day is going to be, it's going to pay dividends in the long run. Let's put it that way. And even if it's just one little step right now, and you can get 15, 30 minutes back in your day, that really helps. Really definitely helps in the long run. Then you can start to look for more of that going forward. Yeah, Elena, I hear you. It is a work in progress and an everyday struggle. I hear you. Every day is different for me, and one of the things I've been learning is just to try to embrace that. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to fit exactly the way that I want. This is where time blocking is a struggle for me. I try to the one thing that I am trying to do is just have in mind when my green zone is, for example, and trying to get myself to do my most important work in that time, and not necessarily heavily time blocking it out like say Cal Newport would recommend to do. So just trying to leverage at least one bit of things, and then also knowing maybe toward the end of the day, that's when I can do those lower energy things. It's less firmly fitting it into hours and just more having an awareness and trying to cultivate that. But you're right, it's a journey, and we all need to remember that. We're not going to have it all sorted out. There is no 6-step process to having the most productive day of your life. Like a lot of productivity gurus have said over the years, there really is this philosophy in a lot of ways that has developed in the productivity world that if you just do these 12 things, if you just do these 10 things, if you just set up this system in this right way, if you follow my methodology, then you're going to have the best day of your life. You're going to get all your stuff done, and then you're going to be golden. That's not how it works. It is an iterative process that takes tons of refinement, tons of effort, tons of thinking, and lots of time to figure out for yourself. And then what happens is that the season of life you're in changes. Maybe you have kids, maybe you get married, maybe your kids go off to college, maybe you get a new job, and then you got to figure it all out over again. And so it's definitely a process. It's definitely a challenge, and I'm right with you in that it's not the easiest thing to figure out. But even just beginning to think about it, you're on the right path. So I would just encourage you with that today. Yeah, Clement, that's a really good point. The best is to understand that tomorrow you may solve your problem 2 times quicker than if you push hard late today. Definitely something that I've had to try to figure out how to pull myself back on myself. I literally remember in college, because I have a computer science degree, so I am familiar with the development world, definitely. But I remember in college working on writing a compiler for one of my senior level projects, and I was cranking on it for like 4 hours trying to fix this one specific problem with regular expressions, which, if you know programming world, can be kind of a challenging thing to figure out. They're kind of annoying to deal with at times too, and you have a lot of edge cases that you have to handle and things of that sort. Literally cranking on this for 4 hours, and I just get so frustrated that I give up. I literally go to bed that night. Next morning, I open up my computer, and within 3 seconds, I have the problem figured out. It's just sometimes getting away from it really helps. And your brain does a lot of work when we don't realize it's working, which is quite amazing. So a lot of this stuff here isn't quite as relevant to what I'm trying to build out. But I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here for this talk about remote work. By the way, if you haven't taken a second to hit the like button on the stream and you're finding the content in this valuable, do hit the like button. It just helps people discover what we're doing here on the channel a little bit more effectively in the future. So if you have liked it, thank you. And if you do, appreciate it a lot. All right, so let's see. Is there another remote work study? McKinsey. Always interesting. I hate cookie banners, by the way. Half the time, if you want to decline cookies, it takes you like 12 clicks to do it, and it's just annoying. Got to switch screens. Sorry about that. What kind of public from my talk? Clement's asking. Traditional company, tech company, startup. It's actually a wide variety of companies in the region that I live in Minnesota. And so it's probably more traditional companies, maybe a few tech-ish companies, but they're probably going to be more on the manufacturing side of things or knowledge work type of things. But definitely fewer startups. And probably not many tech companies. That's where I'm looking at. But they're all people who are interested in understanding the future trends of work, what workers are looking for and demanding. And so I want to try to pull out some of the broad trends and then distill that information down into how can that impact a rural company in our state. And how that can impact our communities as well, because one of the things that I have been finding and thinking about a lot in regards to remote work is that there's a significant economic benefit for companies who have remote workers in, well, let me rephrase that. There's a significant economic benefit for communities who have companies that are remote work companies founded there and also who draw remote workers to them. The community that I live in, there's not a lot of high-tech work. There's not a lot of high-paying jobs or anything like that. But if you can work remotely for, say, a tech company in this small community, then that increases the amount of income that's coming into this community. And if you start getting 10, 20, 50 remote workers who are working for companies that bring more money in than in the locale that you live in, then you start to develop an improved economic activity in that community because there's more money coming in. People are buying more expensive houses and they're investing in more activities and spending more money there and things of that sort. So there's an economic boost that happens beyond just what like traditional tourism and things like that for small communities in rural parts of America in particular. And then for companies, you can start to pull talent out of nearly everywhere in the world or everywhere in your region versus saying, hey, you all have to move to us. There are a number of companies, actually very well-known companies, at least in the States or in specific industries, that are located in a small town that's smaller than the one that I live in, about 2 hours away. But because they're more manufacturing oriented, people have to move there. I know there's one of them that actually buses people in from 2 hours away to work at that company, which I just find is wild. But if you don't have to work and live in a community, if you're not working with physical goods, then why restrict people to have to come into an office or into a building in a place where they might not necessarily want to live? So give them the freedom to be able to live where they want. Then there are also tons of downsides with that too. For example, if you're a company and you're hiring full-time employees, if you're a company in the United States and you're hiring full-time employees from other states, a lot of times you have to establish what's called a tax nexus in those states. And so you have to pay taxes into that state as a company, and it can get a little messy and trying to deal with that. Apparently I'm overloading my encoder, so I'll have to turn that down after the stream. Well then, that's kind of fun. I'll probably have to revisit some of this. Flexible working arrangements. Yeah, that's a huge boost for people. Yeah, so I guess some of the trends that I'm noticing in the midst of doing this research is that people want remote work. They want flexible working, and it's really high on the priority list for people finding a new job. I know the Great Resignation has been a thing, and there's been some questions as if that people actually want that outcome, because they often end up quitting those jobs, or at least a significant percentage of people have been quitting those jobs after the fact that they get them. They resign and they realize that the grass is not greener on the other side. However, I do think there is a place where if a company is not willing to be flexible anymore, then they might as well try another company that might be more flexible. I do find it interesting that there's a lot of companies who tend to signal more for alignment with their cultural values in their interview process, but that is one of the bottom items for people in priority and wanting to shift jobs. I do find this interesting. These are obstacles to peak performance. I find it interesting that people are saying an inability to share your full self at work is an obstacle. Makes sense that access to reliable high-speed internet would be an obstacle for remote workers. A lot of folks, I am very grateful I live in an area that has, even in the rural areas, has gigabit fiber out to homes. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. But there's a lot of people, even in metropolitan areas, that don't have reliable high-speed internet. I just find that wild. And then especially when you get into certain rural areas, it's even harder to get internet. I mean, some people are still living off of satellite internet. I'm not talking Starlink satellite internet, but old school satellite internet run by like Dish and other providers like that. And the speeds are hardly better than dial-up was 25 years ago. Mental health issues, I can see that being a challenge. Like it's so much easier to find yourself disconnected when you're working remotely, and that type of disconnection, I think, contributes to mental health challenges that people have a lot of times. It's obviously not the end all be all of things, but it can increase, I think, in a remote environment. Okay, here's an interesting article as well. If we're all so busy, why isn't anything getting done? Reasonable question to ask, right? Most executives say they frequently find themselves spending way too much time on pointless interactions that drain their energy and produce information overload. That is I think that is a key factor and a key idea right there. Information overload. When you're working in a remote environment, all of that communication has to happen through digital media, Slack, different chat applications, email, project management tools, things of that sort. And then if you add meetings on top of it, sometimes people don't know, meetings aren't always necessarily structured in the most healthy, helpful, and appropriate manners. And so that can be a really negative thing. This is a helpful set of collaborative actions: decision making, creative solutions and coordination, and information sharing. Interesting. I heard recently a study, a lot of modern workplace thought is built off this idea that if you just foster collaboration and brainstorming and put people in the same room, they'll come together with great solutions. That research might not necessarily be 100% accurate, and that brainstorming doesn't always lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes, and depending on the type of person, if someone's a little bit more extroverted, they might thrive in an environment like that. But people who are more introverted might not like to be put on the spot to share their ideas, and they want to spend more time developing them. And so having a completely synchronous brainstorming session might not be the most productive, but maybe having some kind of a asynchronous brainstorming session might be helpful. I just find this chart to be interesting here. This is also really... Oh yeah, Clement, I think that's where I'm drawing those drawing that connection actually is from that specific article from Twist. I'll have to pull the link up for that one. This is really interesting, and I'm drawing a direct conclusion from this from previous experience. There was a job where there were a couple managers leading some teams who specifically said, "You're adults, get the work done." But what this meant was, I'm not really going to be involved with you at all. You're going to go do your thing. I'm going to do my thing. And as long as you're not pissing anybody off, you're going to be fine. And I find this is interesting, though, that empowering others doesn't mean leaving them alone. It requires leaders to give employees both the tools and the right level of guidance and involvement. Leaders should play what we call the coach role. They don't tell people what to do, but instead provide guidance and guardrails and ensure accountability while stepping back and allowing others to come up with solutions. I'll tell you what, trying to come in and be a coach when empowerment has been played in the past as you do you, I do me, and I'm not really going to care what you're doing, and I'm not going to be involved at all, that's not really received very well. It can take a long time. I'm just going to make a note here. What happened there? Oh, I see. It's not wanting to. Cancel. Spaces. Come on. Let's do spaces. Can we do spaces? Here, I'm going to type it somewhere else then. Just trying to relate this to Simon Sinek because that's a big proponent, or he's a big proponent of psychological safety. I like this idea. Meetings for one-way information sharing must be canceled in favor of other mechanisms such as a memo, podcast, or vlog. That's at Netflix. Okay, memo makes sense. But I love the fact that companies are using podcasts and vlogs as a way to distribute information. I suppose this is maybe using a software like Yak, which does async audio, or Loom for async video. Those are really great ways to communicate. I love that idea. And this is honestly one of the things that I've run into in previous async jobs that are just text only, is that you lose all of that enthusiasm and energy and communication that happens when you're solely writing stuff. You don't really get to know people as well and where they're coming from when you're going only on their writing. And it can take forever to draft something that communicates effectively what you're trying to say through writing, because it just, people consume it differently than they do like you and me talking like this. So a podcast or a vlog, I think that's a really fascinating way to communicate information. I suppose this is kind of like the company-wide email that goes out with a voicemail attached from the CEO. As kind of old school, people used to do that. Old school, I guess, being like 10 years ago. But I remember at a company that I worked for, the CEO would do that every once in a while. If they had an announcement, they would record a voicemail and it would be digitized, and then they would send it out as a company-wide email. It works. It's a lot easier than writing it out. But I like that idea. And then for two-way information sharing is limited, meaning because they have to review materials in advance, and then you don't have presentations with Q&A. Netflix has reduced the number of meetings by more than 65%, and very highly favorable. 85% of employees favor the approach. That's fantastic. Well, I think we found some interesting stuff today. What about you? I've been fascinated by this topic area around remote work, and I'm really excited I'm able to give this talk in about a month's time. Unfortunately, it's not going to be recorded, so I won't be able to share it in that way, but maybe we can do a video or something on it at some point if there's interest in that for the channel, even though it doesn't really fit with what we talk about here generally. But anyway, I'm going to wrap up this stream here. Couple things. First, if you found this topic interesting, if you're looking for some help alongside of what we've been talking about here, let's see here. I have a guide that you can download over on thinkeffective.co/remote101 is the name of the URL. Put it in the chat for you. It's called Remote Work 101, 5 essential skills to keep you organized, healthy, and on track. And those skills are intentionality, communication, time management, prioritization, and rest. This is all available for free if you head on over to thinkeffective.co/remote101 and sign up for the membership there. Let me know if you find this helpful, and would love to hear from you on that. Also, if you found this stream helpful and you want to support what we're doing here on the YouTube channel, consider joining and becoming a channel member. All you got to do is hit the join button below. There are a couple different options there. And yeah, I would love to have you a part of this. It helps to basically help me understand what's valuable, and it helps us continue to produce content like this and make it more financially viable for us to do that, for me to do that. I appreciate Clement, Nicholas, both on the stream today, who are channel members. And if you're interested in joining at any time, go ahead and hit the join button below any of our videos. If you're on mobile too, there is a link in each live stream description for the join, because I know YouTube hasn't always put the join button, hasn't put it quite yet on mobile. Maybe some people will have it, but I know that's coming soon. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this stream up here. If anybody has any last minute questions, do pop them in the chat. We can hang out for a couple of moments here while we wrap things up. Just kind of, yeah, enjoy the time. I have been working on a video based upon that poll that we talked about at the beginning of the stream today on goals and how I think about goals and how you can think about goals. So that'll be coming in the near future if you're interested in that. So be watching for that on the channel. Also launched a new newsletter. Pushed a newsletter out this week, which was fun. That's going to be semi on a weekly basis. At least I'm hoping so. We'll see how things go with the job hunt and how all that goes and what's sustainable in the long term. But that's the aim, and the goal of that one is to put it out on a weekly basis, and it's called Toolbox Tips. If you sign up for our free guide there, you'll also get access to that newsletter as well. But with that, thanks so much for joining on the stream today. I appreciate having you all here. Thanks for the excellent conversation about remote work and working and how to figure all this out. Again, it's all a journey. We're on it together, and I appreciate that you're here with me on that, and we can figure this all out. Remember to join us next week, Thursday, for another Think With Me Thursday about 1 p.m. Central Time. At least I think I'm doing it Thursday. I have to check my schedule. Sometimes it's been all over the place lately, but so be it. I'll put an event out on YouTube, and you'll know exactly when it is happening. But until then, stay effective. See you next time.